Welcome to my channel Bare Minimum Reviews. This is the new Marantz Audio Visual 8K Receiver Senior 6015 review. The State Route 6015 is a 9.2-channel AV receiver with 110 watts of power per channel, supports all the usual audio formats like Dolby Atmos and DTS X along with Dolby Surround and DTS Neural X up mixing technologies and Dolby Atmos height virtualization and DTS Virtual X virtual technologies, but also features IMAX enhanced for anyone interested. It comes with Hdmi Multi-EQ XT32, which is the best auto calibration system Marantz offers, and has an extensive list of extra features including high-resolution audio, HEOS and Airplay 2, voice control and custom integration, USB, online and upgraded Bluetooth streaming capabilities. Obviously, the biggest highlight of the new release is HDMI 2.1. Along with all the new technologies this brings, like 4K at 120Hz and 8K at 60Hz pass-through, ALLM, VRR, QMS, QFT and eARC, which are mostly gaming-eccentric features, and we will talk more about the new HDMI a bit further down our review. Design. If you are looking into any differences in terms of dimensions and size, don't, as the State Route 6015 hasn't changed a bit in this year compared to its predecessor. This means that the receiver is definitely bigger than average, and if you turn the antennas into a horizontal position, and weighs 12.8 kilograms, making this a small beast. The receiver not only needs certain space, but keep in mind to have enough breathing space around it, as it can get very hot at times. Using an extra cooling solution is the ideal way to go, and there are plenty of products out there to help you with this. The State Route 6015 is the first receiver as the series that features a front hatch that hides all buttons, and we love this design as it makes it more minimal and less ugly. With everything hidden, there is hardly any evidence this is a new model, and except from the State Route 6015 naming, there is no change whatsoever. All Marantz receivers have a very distinct characteristic that immediately make you understand its origins, and this is no other than the small circular display at the front of the unit. This, along with the slightly curved front left and right corners, create a very intriguing design that differentiate itself from the rest more boxy type of AV receivers. The unit comes with the usual two knobs configuration, with the right one for the volume and the left for input selection, while under the right one we find the IR sensor. On the lower left there is a single circular button for powering the unit, while everything else is hidden behind the front hatch. Upon opening this front hatch, we are greeted with a usual layout of buttons and ports. At the top, a thin, straight line of buttons include Pure Direct, MDAX, Zone 2 and tuner controls, dimmer, status and sound mode selection. Under these, from left to right, we get the usual headphones jack, the setup microphone port, a front USB for connecting external storage, and to the right side a composite video input along with a single analog stereo audio input. What is missing? If you have paid attention to any of our 2020 releases reviews, then you have guessed it right. There is no front HDMI port this year, as the arrival of HDMI 2.1 seems to be the reason behind this. We are very disappointed with this, as a front HDMI port was always useful and very practical, and we do hope that Marantz will bring it back in their future releases. The State Route 6015 is no slouch when it comes to the internal audio components it uses. As such, we find the familiar AKM AK4458 32-bit DACs that are responsible for all audio conversions. It features Marantz's proprietary hyper-dynamic amplifier modules, HDAMs, that deliver ultra-wide band response and detailed reproduction, as well as current feedback circuitry and hybrid PLL clock jitter reducer for optimum fidelity and maximum dynamic range. Along with its high-current discrete power amplifier with low impedance drive capability, it offers operational stability with a wide range of speakers for balanced, quality sound. Let's see the remote that comes with the receiver next. As this unit doesn't have many differences compared to the State Route 5015 that we reviewed recently, it was natural to use the same remote also. As such, the one we find here is the 2020 version code named RC042SR, and basically what has changed is the functionality of one button, as the AUX2, which was used for one of the HDMI inputs, has been switched to 8K for the HDMI 2.1 port located at the back. The design of the remote is not bad, far from it, but when you pay such a premium price, we would like to be able to have something better than this. There is a lot of space between the buttons, but we feel they should be slightly bigger to give a more comfortable touch. At least adequate space between them ensures you will not accidentally press the wrong button in the dark, as there is no backlight function here that could help. Also, with the buttons available, we believe that the remote could shrink a little to be easier to handle, as it is slightly bigger than what we would like. The top of the remote is where all of the inputs are located, with the only change being the 8K button that we mentioned above, while volume, channels and navigation controls are placed in the middle as we usually see, followed by 3 playback buttons with 4 selection buttons underneath them. At the bottom we get 4 colored sound modes to choose from. Nothing fancy, but not bad either. It has a nice texture surface that makes it look more interesting, but we do miss a backlight function that can be of great help if you want to use it in a dark environment. The SR6015 continues the trend of Marantz offering top quality products, and if there is one minus this year, this is definitely the omission of the front HDMI port. Audio quality. When it comes to what kind of audio formats are supported, things are pretty much the same across the board as all new 2020 models. At least the full-sized ones come with the same kind of specs in this regard. As such, the SR6015 supports all the latest audio formats like Dolby Atmos and DTS X. There is also Dolby Surround and DTS Neural X up-mixing technologies that can up-mix simple stereo audio tracks into full immersive surround sound. We also get the usual support for virtual tech, and while until 2018 there was only DTS Virtual X, from 2019 Dolby Height Virtualization has become a standard feature also. What these virtual tech do is that they can create virtual speakers in space where there are no actual speakers present, and create the illusion of sound with the use of special algorithms and processing. This can be very handy if you cannot place speakers in certain areas, like on the ceiling for example. Obviously the result is in no way the same as having actual speakers, but it can be a good alternative in many cases. One thing that is worth noting is that Dolby Atmos Height Virtualization can be used for both Dolby Digital as well as DTS audio tracks. On the other hand, DTS Virtual X can be used only with DTS tracks, and as a result Dolby's offering seems to be getting the upper hand on this. Also, if you want to enable the Dolby Atmos Height Virtualization, it can be a bit tricky to find out how to do it, as there is no direct button that can enable this. In order to enable it, you will have to first go into the main menu, in the audio section, and find the surround parameter. In there you will find the speaker virtualizer that you have to enable first, and after use one of the sound modes that use Dolby Surround. This way Dolby's virtualizer will be enabled. Obviously, if you haven't done this before, it may seem slightly confusing at first, but this is the way to do it. Lastly, we shouldn't forget to add that the SR6015 is the first model in the performance ladder to add IMAX enhanced content support. Although content that supports this format is not very widespread, the more we get the better. Unfortunately, this unit is missing Auro 3D, which seems to be a favorite among many home theater enthusiasts, but this is kept for the top-tier units only. The SR6015 features 9 channels of built-in amplification with a theoretical 110 watts of power, 8 ohm, 20 Hz to 20 kHz, 0.08% 2-chains drive, which is plenty in order to fill a medium-sized room without any problem. The receiver is capable of powering dual subwoofer setups, which is very common among home theater fans, and it's good to see this here also. With the supported channels, you can create either a 5.2.4 or a 7.2.2 channels Dolby Atmos audio setup. The receiver can process all 11 channels, so in case you add an external 2 channels amplifier, you can go all the way for a 7.2.4 channels Atmos system. As we always do in these tests, we went for a 5.1.4 Dolby Atmos setup with a single subwoofer placed at the front left corner of our testing room and 4 ceiling speakers for the Atmos overhead layer. As for the movie we went with for this test was the amazing Aquaman in 4K UHD that features an impressive Dolby Atmos mix. The film is a visual and audio extravaganza and totally throws you into its action and world, with its extreme attention to detail and visual style that is really unique for its kind. The underwater scenes need special mention, as a good Atmos system can really add so much, with atmospherics playing a big part into creating an enveloping bubble that extends on all three axes. But as always, we start our observations from the front sound stage, and here the performance was bold, loud and very expansive, creating just the perfect set that will put you right into the action. The center channel was masterfully kept isolated front and center from the rest of the effects, and thus provided with clear and distinct dialogue even during extremely busy action scenes. Channel shifting and separation was excellent, while resolution was at all times high. Surround activity was exceptionally good, but not as much to the face as the front, and it was mostly complementing the action, giving the necessary extension towards the back without distracting our attention from what was going on at the front. The film has plenty of underwater scenes, and the surround channels were pretty busy in order to provide you with a sense of scale and volume necessary to make these scenes believable. Atmos effects were equally impressive as the surrounds, and had the necessary activity in order to completely envelope you in the world. Particularly impressive was the duel between Arthur and Orm in the underwater Colosseum, where the ceiling speakers added a much-needed additional sound layer as the action unfolded all around and above us. But there were plenty of other scenes where the Atmos effects vastly upped our overall impression of what this soundtrack had to offer. Lastly, you cannot talk about such a bombastic film without mentioning the bass. The final epic battle is a feast for the ears and a marvelous cacophony of sounds that surprisingly the receiver managed with exceptional control and mastery. The low end provided the necessary weight to these huge beasts, while explosions were shaking our room left and right and didn't stop till the battle was over. The State Route 6015 did provide our subwoofer all the necessary information in order to bring all this chaos in our room with jaw-dropping accuracy, power and punch. As we already mentioned, the State Route 6015 comes with 110 watts per channel, but this only refers to a 2-channel setup. This means that for a full surround system the power output will greatly decrease. But the State Route 6015 has plenty of power for a medium-sized room, so you should not worry too much about this. As we usually do in our tests, we did push it as much as our ears would allow, and we didn't feel like the receiver would buckle under the pressure. The unit kept a straight face with nice balance and no obvious distortion throughout the entire dynamic range. All Marantz AV receivers are famous for the musical qualities, and the State Route 6015 retains all the characteristics that made the previous models such good music performers. As such, this receiver supports not only the usual lower quality audio formats like MP3, WMA, up to 192 kilobits per second, and AAC, but can also play back high-resolution audio in the likes of FLAC, ALAC and WAV files up to 192 kHz, 24-bit quality. DSD streaming is also available for both 2.8 and 5.6 MHz. For this testing, as we usually do, we selected a few favorite tracks in FLAC format that we streamed through the front USB port for the best quality possible. If you have ever heard one of the top Marantz receivers lately, then you know more or less what to expect from the State Route 6015, as it is fundamentally the same receiver we have been getting the last few years. The front channels brought the soundstage to life with exceptional clarity, sound resolution and sound imaging. Everything fell right into place, as each audio source was so clearly defined in space that felt like it was in our room. Separation between the channels was precise and very accurate. The receiver did not fail us at any point, with a very stellar mid-range that sounded very balanced, while the high frequencies were alive and full of emotion. As for the bass, everything was kept tight and in control without losing focus or the tempo during more demanding low-end sessions. The State Route 6015 proved to be capable at reproducing a wide range of music styles like pop, rock, classical music, jazz and even heavy metal on it, and it scored high on all of them. If you pair it with a good set of speakers, then be prepared to be amazed. It's always a pleasure when we test a Marantz receiver. Its quality, prowess and ability to render all sounds with such resolution and finesse while at the same time not losing any of its power characteristics makes it an amazing feat, and will certainly satisfy even the most demanding of users. Ports and connectivity. Let's see next what kind of connectivity options we get in this one. If you look at both the state route 6015 and the 2019 state route 6014, what is immediately apparent is that both units share exactly the same ports, the same number of ports and the same layout. There is a small change, but we will talk about it shortly, but generally you will not find anything different from its predecessor here, and to be honest, there are so many options to choose from that the unit is missing very few specialized ports that most users will probably never need. We mentioned at the beginning of our review about the frontal ports that we get under the center hatch that include a headphones jack, the microphone calibration port, a USB port, as well as a composite video and analog stereo inputs that can be used for fast and easy access. The missing front HDMI input is a bummer and will certainly make some consumers shake their heads in frustration. Turning the unit around, we find 11 speaker terminals in a single row for easy cable management, but keep in mind that only 9 of them can be used with the built-in amplifiers. The last 2 need an external amp if you want to use them all at the same time. We also get 7 HDMI inputs and 3 HDMI outputs, but from the inputs only 1 is actually HDMI 2.1 and can support all the new features. The rest of them are the usual HDMI 2.0B that we had till recently. At least the good thing here is that unlike the lower tier models that we had to lose 2 HDMI inputs this year, the state route 6015 actually loses only 1, the front. HDMI 2.1 brings with it a vast range of existing and new features that includes 8K, 60Hz and 4K, 120Hz pass-through capability, 4:4 pure color subsampling, Dolby Vision, HLG, HDR10, 21:9 video, 3D and BT.2020 pass-through, HDR10+, Dynamic HDR, ALLM, VRR, QMS, QFT, ARC, eARC, Auto Lip Sync and HDMI Cec. Now there is another thing we need to mention here about the HDMI 2.1 ports being used in all AV receivers this year, including the state route 6015. We have already mentioned this in our previous reviews, so we will just repeat what we wrote before. It seems that the Panasonic chip that handles the HDMI 2.1 connection cannot process the signal of specific sources that output at 4K, 120Hz RGB signal, 8-bit, 10-bit, 12-bit, like the Xbox Series 10, and this results in a black screen. Now there are not many sources that currently support 4K at 120Hz with this exact configuration, but this is probably a hardware issue and cannot be solved by a simple firmware update. Now if you are wondering, the state route 6015 has no problem whatsoever if you are watching movies or playing games at 4K 60Hz and 4K 120Hz YCbCr4, 2:2 signals, 32 gigabits per second, or anything below that, so in most cases you are going to be absolutely fine. This means that the PS5 will work without any problems. In the rare case where the receiver accepts a 4K, 120Hz RGB signal, 8-bit, 10-bit, 12-bit, like from the Xbox Series 10 for example, this is when this problem will appear, and the only current workaround is to connect your source device directly to your TV and from the eARC connection to the receiver. To be honest, this is a problem that should not happen in the first place and shows that somewhere there has been a major miscommunication between manufacturers, but you should keep in mind that this will probably not affect you as much as you may think of. Right now this problem seems to affect all new AV receivers in 2020, including Denon, Marantz and Yamaha. All manufacturers have acknowledged the problem, but as far as a solution, it seems that it's a problem that can only be solved with updated hardware, and to see full HDMI 2.1 support without any problems we will have to wait for their 2021 releases. If they had the time to update the necessary hardware, of course, which remains to be seen. Everything else remains exactly the same as the state route 6014, so what we get is 2 component video inputs and 1 output, 3 composite video inputs and 1 output, 5 analog stereo audio inputs with 1 more dedicated for phono, 7.1 channels multi-channel inputs, 11.2 channels multi-channel pre-outs, 1 analog multi-room output, Zone 2, 2 optical and 2 coaxial digital audio inputs, an IR flasher input, an RS232C port, 1 12 volts trigger, an Ethernet port and the usual FM, AM antenna and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth antenna connectors. Wireless connectivity seems to be the same as all its other 2020 releases, as it has built-in Wi-Fi that supports both 2.4 and 5 GHz as well as Bluetooth for streaming audio, but here we get a small update as the StateRoute 6015 comes with v4.2. We would like to see Bluetooth v5.0, but none of their latest releases have upgraded to version 5. Maybe 2021 models will get that. All attention this year is certainly on the HDMI 2.1, but not everything went smooth on its first outing. On the one hand, it comes with plenty of new technologies, but the unforgivable HDMI 2.1 bug will certainly leave a bad taste to those few that want to use the new port to its full capabilities. Otherwise, the StateRoute 6015 is a powerhouse and comes with everything necessary for even the most demanding of users. OS, apps and features. In terms of extra features, most of Marantz units come with the same set list, while there are slight additions as we move up on the performance ladder, but without adding anything substantial or all-out new functionality. So in part, this section of our review is more or less the same as with the other 2020 releases. But of course we will be making certain changes and additions to reflect the StateRoute 6015 specifically. If you have not much experience calibrating an AV receiver by yourself, then you can use the built-in system that is no other than the Audyssey Multi-EQ XT32 variant, which is the most advanced Marantz offers in their units. The XT32 is similar to the XT variant as it features more measurement positions but comes with higher filters resolution and thus can offer better overall results. The AV receiver comes with a calibration microphone, and by using the built-in wizard that guides you step by step, you can achieve very good results without the need to manually do any changes, which can be very handy for casual users. As always, for the best results, a manual calibration is the best, but from what we have seen, the Audyssey system is an excellent assistant for novice and inexperienced users, and the XT32 edition featured in the StateRoute 6015 is very capable at offering very good results for any situation. Along with the Audyssey system, there are a few more features that are included in the suite, with the dynamic EQ being one of them that keeps the dynamic levels as well as clarity even at low volume. The second feature that is included is the dynamic volume that balances sudden volume spikes when there are shifts between TV programs and commercials. There is also Audyssey LFC that uses advanced psychoacoustic algorithms to deliver more full-range balance, including deep bass, without disturbing neighbors or people in other rooms of your home, and lastly Audyssey Sub-EQ HT that provides individual DSP tailoring of each subwoofer in a dual subwoofer setup for deeper bass with improved definition. A 2020 feature that many of Marantz receivers share is the new 2 presets saving function. This gives the receiver the ability to store 2 Audyssey settings and switch between these 2 on the fly, giving you the freedom to tweak your listening experience based on content or listening environment. This can be especially handy if you like to watch different types of films and want to have a setup created specifically for each type. Now, if you are a more advanced user and want to get the maximum out of the receiver, you can dig deeper into calibrating your system with the help of Audyssey Multi-EQ Editor app that can be downloaded for iOS and Android devices and make all calibrations from there. The app has more settings and features, and you can do much more with your system than you would otherwise. The only minus of this is the price, as the app has a one-time fee that you need to pay in order to download, which is a shame considering the premium price you already pay for the unit. In our opinion, they should at least provide a download voucher for their top units as a thank you for buying such expensive equipment. But Marantz has another app available, and this one is free of charge, called Marantz 2016 Avr Remote App, and with this you can have total control of the StateRoute 6015 from your mobile device. We had checked this app before in some of our previous reviews and we found it pretty good, so since it's free you can try and see if you like it. In terms of menu interface and settings, everything remains the same as we have been used lately, with a similar set of functions meant that there was no need for any major overhauling. All menus are separated into categories according to their appropriate functionality, and everything was easy to find even with so many settings and features available. Nothing worthy of noting here really, although we would love to see a more modern UI at some point in the future. All Marantz receivers, including the State Route 6015, comes with an eco mode that you can enable and let the receiver manage its power output in order to achieve power economy. But if you want the unit to perform at its peak power at all times, then we suggest you to better leave this setting turned off. We would only recommend this if your unit becomes really hot and you have no other way of cooling it down, then this could potentially help a little. Moving on to streaming, the State Route 6015 has the ability to stream content locally if you have a network server like a NAS connected or through the internet from one of the available streaming services available. The list is pretty extensive and includes all the big names like TuneIn Internet Radio, Spotify, Pandora, SiriusXM, Amazon Music HD, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Napster, SoundCloud, Moodmix, just to name a few. With the receiver supporting both wired as well as wireless connections, 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz, you can choose what is best depending on your house configuration and what is best for your situation. But streaming capabilities don't stop there, as with Airplay 2 you can stream music from Apple devices through the use of Bluetooth in case you prefer Apple's solution. And since we mentioned Bluetooth, we should note that a new feature that has been added to many of 2020 models, including the State Route 6015, is the ability to stream audio to Bluetooth-enabled headphones. And not only this, as you can now output sound from both the wired speakers and to a Bluetooth headphones at the same time. As the unit supports USB streaming, it is pretty essential that comes with MDAX2 support. Compressed music enhancement in the State Route 6015 is done by Marantz MDAX2 technology. The use of compressed audio files like MP3, Windows Media Audio or AAC is the norm nowadays. The audio quality of these compressed files, however, is less than what is found in the original lossless files on a CD, especially lacking in the higher frequencies and affecting the lower frequencies, which make the audio image less wide and deep. The Marantz Digital Audio Expander 2, also called MDAX2, recalculates the outputted frequency range. This enables you to get a more detailed and clearer sound. The result may not be as good as some high-resolution audio files, but any improvement is a welcome one. Now let's see what is there in terms of multi-room capabilities. No change here either, as the receiver gets the HEOS multi-room audio technology that you can use in order to connect the State Route 6015 with other HEOS-enabled speakers you may have around your house. As an alternative, there is also Airplay 2 that does exactly the same job with speakers that are Airplay 2 enabled. And while streaming has definitely become the normal nowadays when it comes to multi-room environments, the State Route 6015 also supports Zone 2 in order to connect a pair of speakers to a second room or area through its Zone 2 ports. Marantz has not left voice control out of its feature list and remains the same as always, as we get not only the two most known services being Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant, but also Apple Siri through the Airplay 2 app and Josh.ai. All of them need their respective external devices to be used, obviously, but it's good to see that Marantz offers full support for the last few years now, and it has become a standard nowadays. Another feature that Marantz seems to favor year after year is strong custom integration capabilities, and the State Route 6015 continues this trend. The unit features external 232 rupees, IP and web control capabilities for easy customization and compatibility with third-party integration solutions. The Marantz State Route 6015 offers IP control capability for major third-party control devices, as well as Control 4 SDPP, Simple Device Detection Protocol, certification for seamless integration with Control 4 home automation equipment. IR, infrared, remote control input and output are included on the rear panel for remote control compatibility with other components in your home theater system. As a result, the State Route 6015 is a great option for all custom installers. A new 2020 feature seems to be the Pre-Amplifier Mode, with which your Marantz AV receiver works as a perfect AV pre-processor with the latest HDMI connectivity. Pre-Amplifier Mode provides a cleaner signal path and more tolerance in clipping level by disconnecting internal amplifiers. Now, to be honest, we don't know how this will benefit the State Route 6015. Usually anyone that buys an AV receiver does so for the convenience of having all-in-one. Those that prefer separates will definitely go for a processor plus amplifiers, so we don't see the reason why someone would purchase the State Route 6015 to use this mode in parallel with external amplifiers. But there are many more lesser features in the receiver that are worthy of mention, and these include Hdmi Cec functionality, analog and HDMI to HDMI upscaling up to 8K at 50/60ths of a Hz resolution, bi-amp capabilities, while the unit is also Roon-tested, certified. Now we need to clear some of the confusion here, as there are two types of certifications and many people don't know the difference between them. The two types of certification are Roon-ready and Roon-tested. The State Route 6015, as with all the other Marantz receivers, is Roon-tested, which means that it doesn't have Roon built in but has been tested to work, but not without a small catch. And that is audio quality. As this works through Airplay streaming, audio quality is limited to only 16-bit, 44.1 kHz. Keep that in mind in case Roon is specifically important to you but also want your files to be streamed in their original high quality. The 2019 State Route 6014 was already fully packed with features, and the new State Route 6015 takes everything it had and then some. Nothing major here, but the addition of the new Bluetooth to headphones streaming is a nice one, and the Pre-Amplifier Mode can be useful in certain cases and setups, so the more we can get the better. Welcome to my channel, Bare Minimum Reviews. Final thoughts. With new releases year after year, we are used to see small additions and upgrades from manufacturers that usually add slightly more value to their predecessors. 2020 marks the first time for some time that we see a slightly bigger leap with the arrival of Hdmi 2.1, but as with everything new, there were bound to be some hiccups. And although Hdmi 2.1, along with all the new tech it brought, was the main highlight, Marantz added a couple of new features to sweeten the deal even more. The most useful is probably the Bluetooth streaming to headphones alone or in parallel with the main speakers, and the other, less useful in our opinion, the Pre-Amplifier Mode that disconnects the internal amplifiers in order to use an external amp. But the receiver has so much more to offer than these new additions. With its 9.2 channels and 110 watts power output per channel, the State Route 6015 has plenty to give even if you are a demanding user. Along with all virtual and up mixing tech, IMAX enhanced, Audio system, high-resolution audio support, HEOS and Airplay 2, voice and custom integration support, along with many more lesser features including bi-amp, Roon support, USB and Bluetooth streaming and upscaling capabilities, there is hardly anything you will be missing. Frankly, when it comes to its downsides, it seems that these are pretty much the same across their entire 2020 lineup. As such, the number one problem is obviously the inability of the State Route 6015 to pass all the 4K at 120Hz signals through its Hdmi 2.1 port. If you are not a gamer, this will probably never affect you, but if you like video games, then this could be a serious source of frustration. We also don't like that we have lost the front HDMI input, which was so practical, and for such a premium unit, not having a backlit remote is not good at all. Lastly, the price is definitely higher than some of the competing models and will make many consumers have second thoughts before pulling the trigger. Marantz was always a brand that guaranteed quality, and the Marantz State Route 6015 continues to prove that there is always room for improvement even when you think there is nothing else to add. There are a few obvious missteps, but for anyone serious about his home cinema immersion, the State Route 6015 is the kind of AV receiver that will provide you with such an experience that will be for sure unforgettable. Thanks for checking out my comprehensive review.